It's what you'd call a media blitz, a campaign to pardon Edward Snowden that comes complete with the release of a Hollywood movie directed by Oliver Stone and an appeal from the man himself from his exile in Moscow. The clock is ticking. The man they're asking to pardon him leaves office in January and hardly has a track record of leniency. Barack Obama using an espionage act written for the purposes of World War I to lock up more so-called traitors than all of his predecessors combined. 3 years after the U.S. intelligence subcontractor blew the whistle on mass surveillance at home and abroad, has Snowden made his country weaker or stronger? And how have issues of security and privacy evolved in an era where agents for the Russian state stand accused of hacking the doping record of Olympic athletes, and jihadists can prey on teens over encrypted social networking sites? Today in the France 24 debate, to pardon or not Mr. Snowden. With us, Zachary Miller, producer and director of the upcoming documentary Countermeasures Unveiling the Global Surveillance State. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
From Washington, journalist and columnist James Kirchick, who is a fellow with the Foreign Policy Initiative. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
From Seattle, former intelligence operative Naveed Jamali, who I guess you could say blew the whistle on himself in the book How to Catch a Russian Spy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Fabrice Epelboin, who teaches information warfare, I love saying that, at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation, and you have on the hashtag F24debate on Facebook and Twitter. There was Citizen 4, that Academy Award-winning documentary by Laura Poitras, now make way for the Hollywood blockbuster. Joseph Gordon-Levitt starring in Oliver Stone's film.
You're looking at a possible death sentence.
I can't turn back from this.
Watch yourself. We are running out of time.
They're gonna come for me. They're gonna come for all of you too.
All right, I'll start with you, Zachary Miller. I've seen mixed reviews so far. Rolling Stone's Peter Travers says that nothing wrong with waving the flag for whistleblowing. In practice, it sucks the life out of a movie that actually tells us less than the Poitras documentary did. On the other hand, Variety's chief film critic, Owen Gleiberman, says it's a riveting procedural docudrama that makes Oliver Stone matter again after several bumps. What's your expectations of this film?
My expectations are good because I like Oliver Stone's films, but I can't comment on it because, of course, I haven't seen it. But then again, people thought JFK was too long, but I loved it. So,
films are tricky when we're talking about real life stories that matter. In any case, what we have seen, James Kirchick, I'll ask you about this. The film certainly getting a lot of buzz, especially when we saw that conference call from Moscow with Edward Snowden. We've seen human rights advocates, the American Civil Liberties Union, all launching this campaign to pardon Snowden. Is this going to up the pressure?
Well, I think it's interesting that your guest said that JFK was one of his favorite films, and it's appropriate that Oliver Stone would make this movie about Snowden, because JFK, let's not forget, was a conspiracy theory based on a conspiracy theory that was started by the Soviet Union in the 1960s, which is that JFK, John F. Kennedy, was murdered by a right-wing secret CIA plot. That was a lie, an active measure, as what's known in Soviet terms, to discredit the United States. And that's what Oliver Stone is doing with this new film. He's personally friendly with Vladimir Putin. He met with him last year. He said that the revolution in Ukraine was a CIA fascist plot, which is Russian propaganda. And so it's not surprising that Oliver Stone would put out a film that is parroting Russian propaganda in light of what we know, that Edward Snowden has been working for the Russians for the past 3 years, based in Moscow.
Fabrice Epelboin, will you go see the movie?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm also a big fan of Oliver Stone, so I will definitely look at the movie.
All right, 2 fans of Oliver Stone. How about you, Naveed Jamali?
Full disclosure, my book is actually being turned into a movie by 20th Century Fox. I am absolutely no fan of Edward Snowden. Listen, I spent 4 years undercover as a double agent, actively working against Russian military intelligence in New York. I have no love for either the Russians nor Edward Snowden. I view him as a complete, fabrication of something that is not what he pertains to be. I mean, he was a low-level, network, quote-unquote sysadmin, a high school dropout, never finished the army, only got his job because of his dad. There's nothing positive about this man. He was a thief. He's done more damage to the world, the country, and anything that glamorizes him, frankly, is just something that benefits the Russians and hurts the free world. Simple as that.
Nonetheless, he has drawn light for the general public, myself included. I don't follow intelligence matters on a minutiae basis about the way things are practiced and about the way the government spies on ordinary citizens, be they in the United States or abroad. Has he done a public service? He's opened a real debate.
I don't think so. I mean, you say spies. The United States government and the French government, for that matter, do not spy on their citizens. That's a complete, mischaracterization. Look. I think what you have to take a look at here is, we're living in a totally different world. I mean, you mentioned encrypted, communications. You have a mass amount of data that has to be sifted through. And when it comes to intelligence agencies, they're looking for indications and warnings. They're not making recommendations. They're not advising on policy. They're simply put looking for the next attack. And what Edward Snowden has done is twofold. Look, when I was working against the Russians, I can tell you they were terrified about our cyber capabilities. My Russian handler, Oleg Kulikov, would tell me, look, I'm terrified of video camera surveillance in the United States. They were looking to undermine our cyber capabilities. That's one thing. And they did that with Edward Snowden. They've set back our national security infrastructure, and the French as well as other Western countries, tremendously back. Secondly, when it comes to CT or counterterrorism, a lot of that relies on looking at and sifting through data. It's not meant to listen into your phone calls. It's not meant to do anything with privacy.
Can I get in here in a minute?
Those programs away, it impacts our security. Simple as that.
All right, reaction on the hashtag F24 debate. Obama pardoned Snowden. He told the citizens we were being spied on by our government. It's not his fault. You were being shady. Zachary Miller.
Yeah.
Your reaction there to what Naveed Jamali just said.
Yeah, the American government doesn't spy on its citizens. That's either the most naive or the most moronic thing I've heard today. Of course we spy on our citizens. It's been long established that happens. I mean, you have not only Edward Snowden, but you have the people that went before him.
But
Naveed,
Naveed, they're saying they're not like trying to pry into your personal stuff. They're looking for specific things when it comes to counterterror and that kind
like
of thing.
William Binney, who was a 30-year veteran of the NSA, who retired, who went through all the proper channels to stop this kind of thing, who retired because it was against the policies of everything he stood for 30 years working in the NSA. And of course, there was not just William Binney. There's Thomas Drake. There's a lot of people who stood up and went through all the proper channels to get this stopped, to get spying of Americans. And there was software, there was equipment that could have been used to prevent that spying, but it wasn't used. Why? I don't know, but it wasn't. And we need to look at these officers, these veterans of wars and veterans of the NSA who did the right thing and tried to get it done the right way.
Let me add something. Last year, the NSA got busted spying on Airbus industry with the help of a German Secret Service. Where is spotting a terror attack in there? I don't see any terror attack going on in Airbus. Oh, I sure hope so. So how is this related to any kind of fighting terror attacks? I don't see it. I see the NSA as a huge industrial espionage plot. And we do the same. I totally agree with you. In France, we totally do the same. We spy on our own citizen and we spy on foreign industry for the benefit of our national industry. The NSA does the same. The Russian does the same. Chinese does the same. Everybody does the same. What Edward Snowden did was put some light on all this. Now everybody knows what are we going to do in a world where everybody is stealing each other's secret and where ordinary citizens do not have any privacy left.
James Kirchick?
I think we need to distinguish between two things here. There's domestic intelligence and surveillance, and if Edward Snowden had limited his disclosures to what the NSA and other intelligence agencies were doing in terms of within the boundaries of the United States, that would be one thing entirely. The minute Edward Snowden started revealing information about the NSA and CIA activities overseas, he became a traitor. Because there's no laws, there's nothing in the Constitution, there's no statutes that say that the NSA can't spy on foreign leaders or that it can't conduct intelligence operations overseas. And so I'd like to know the two guests here who seem to be defending him, what is he doing in Moscow? Why can't he come back to the United States and face the music if he's a so-called whistleblower and not a traitor, which is really what he is?
I think the Espionage Act you were talking about doesn't involve a fair trial, at least in the way justice is done in the United States. I'm not sure about that, but I don't think he is entitled to a fair, ordinary trial.
That's not certainly not what the White House is saying. They're saying that he will, of course, be provided with what's called due process if he comes back. This is the White House spokesperson response to this push to pardon Snowden.
Mr. Snowden has not been convicted of crimes with regard to this particular situation, but he's charged with serious crimes. And it's the view of the administration and certainly the view of the president that he should return to the United States and face those charges, even as he enjoys the protection of a due process and other rights that are afforded to American citizens who are charged with serious crimes.
Will he get due process, Zachary Miller?
There's no way of knowing. But the thing is, why should he come back and face 30 years for an act of, at the worst, civil disobedience, but in my opinion, a heroic act of letting America know what's going on with the global surveillance problems. Now, as far as Snowden being a fan of the Russians or
yeah, because on that, I have one of the viewers saying Snowden is a treasonous, ignorant fool used by Putin. True values are not giving secrets to an enemy.
Well, he hasn't given any secrets to Putin. The biggest fan of Putin, biggest fan of Putin is Donald Trump, who's the Republican Party candidate for president. That's the biggest fan of Putin.
What does Trump have to do with this?
Yeah, I mean,
You're talking about who's a fan of Putin.
You don't go to Moscow, excuse me, you don't go to Moscow as a former employee of the NSA and not cooperate with the Russians. That does not happen. And to claim otherwise is the height of ignorance.
To claim that it is, you have no evidence of that, and to claim that it is just your speculation.
He's living in Moscow for the past 3 years. Oh, come on. That's
I'm living in France. Am I giving information to the French government? France and America spies on each other all the time, too.
France is a democracy. Russia is an authoritarian police state.
Tell that to Donald Trump, please.
Donald Trump's not a member of our government.
Thank God.
Trump has nothing to do with this.
You have such a little grasp of how the intelligence community works.
I have a large grasp, and I think who has a larger grasp are some of the people I've interviewed, like William Binney, who worked for 30 years in the NSA, like Thomas Drake, like John Kiriakou.
Thomas Drake, listen, you bandy out these two out of the thousands of people, myself included, who have been part of the intelligence community.
There are a lot of people who have been part of the intelligence community.
Navi Jamali.
Listen, Executive Order 12333, there's something called intelligence oversight. This is fact. This is how the intelligence community works. Executive Order 12333, which was enacted under President Reagan, limits, believe it or not, you're going to have a fit when I say this, limits what the intelligence community can do, specifically the DOD, in collecting intelligence against U.S. persons. And U.S. persons is defined incredibly broadly to not just include U.S. citizens. So, this concept that the government is, quote unquote, spying on citizens is absolutely incorrect.
I think you're absolutely incorrect, and I think the people that I've just mentioned have twice, 3 times, or 4 times as much experience working in NSA than you do.
I'm not going to get in. Obviously, my views represent myself and not the federal government, but I'm not going to get into my, my pedigree, as it were. But I can tell you that any intelligence officer, anyone who's in the intelligence community, is trained specifically in intelligence oversight in regards to Executive Order 12333. And if there is ever, as an officer, an employee, or any capacity, any violation of that, there are mechanisms that you can report, and they take that stuff very, very seriously.
Look into the history. Look into the 60 Minutes interview with Thomas Drake.
If that was true, how come some stupid things like NSA employee spying on their spouse or recording sexting between
These are
American
isolated.
citizens. Well, those are massive, isolated incidents. Massive.
They're isolated incidents, and all
They're
those people have been
massive.
punished.
You're
acting as if this is
obviously
a-
having a proof here that, yeah, the U.S. has been spying on its own citizen, and you can be pretty sure that it's the same thing in China, same thing in France, same thing everywhere.
It's not the
else.
same thing.
Gentlemen, we're gonna have to take a quick break.
The U.S.
We're gonna have to take a quick break. Sorry to interrupt. We'll be right back. You're watching the France 24 today.